All right, we are recording. So as people enter, that is no problem, but we will get started so that we respect your time and Kayla's time.
Thank you. Let me just make this
1
second here. I will let everybody know I'm not super tech savvy, so I will do my best, but sometimes it does take me a minute. But I think we're ready to get started, right?
Yes, we're ready. So welcome everyone to our virtual speaker series. I'm Masha from DSAP, the Down Syndrome Association of Pittsburgh, and this is actually our second virtual speaker series called Encouraging Literacy and Language for All. So tonight we're going to discuss how to promote literacy development for individuals of all ages. And our speaker here, Kayla Pavlock, she is an MS CCC-SLP, which she'll explain better than I can. And she brings a unique insight to reading acquisition through a language-based lens. She is a speech-language pathologist, and she is currently pursuing an additional master's degree in reading and literacy with a reading specialist certification. She caters individualized sessions for children, adolescents, and adults to improve reading skills, comprehension, and most importantly, confidence in their abilities. Her passion is to build interest and motivation in readers, whether it be for reading readiness, academics, vocational literacy, and beyond. So she will help our attendees build a toolkit of specific strategies you can use to make reading fun and functional at home, school, and socially. So with that, Kayla, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you and welcome everybody tonight. I am so excited to be here and to share some of the different information that I have been gathering through my studies and through practice. And I just can't wait to share with you about some different things when it comes to the literacy piece. Like Masha had said, my name is Kayla Pavlock. I will go into, let's see here, there we go. Okay, so a little bit about me before we get started. I am a certified speech language pathologist. I got my undergrad degree at Pitt, and I pursued my master's at the Loyola University, Maryland, where I worked for a little bit after school and then moved back to Pittsburgh about 3.5-ish years ago. And while working as an SLP, I started really realizing how much overlap exists between the reading development and language development, and really just went all in. I loved learning about it. I developed quite the passion for teaching it. So now I'm actually also currently studying for an additional master's degree in reading and literacy with a reading and specialist certification. I also, if you might be familiar with it, but I work at Therapy Works. We are a private practice in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. We do occupational therapy and we do speech pathology, and it's been amazing. I think it's so fun. And we do so many different options and so many different things. So with that being said, that's a little bit about me. I wanted to tell you some things about, I wanted to show you a little video for us to get started here. This is just a video of one of our sessions with one of my little ladies who you might have seen at the beginning here, that I work with on reading acquisition and building language into it. When I was practicing this, it played right away. So I wanted to give you a heads up in case that happens. So let's see here. All right. So, oh, perfect. It didn't play right away. Amazing. So as you can see here, we have our letters. We're going to be working on identifying letters. And here's a fun little way, a fun little snippet of what our sessions can look like. Let me see. I think it should be good with the sound. If you guys have trouble, let me know. Okay, let's find letter A. Should I turn the lights on? Okay, tell me, lights. Off, yeah. Okay, let's find letter A. Ooh, is that letter A? Yeah. So as you can see here, we were building in some language. I worked on the letter acquisition. I had the letters that I know she already knows to help work on the identifying of it. But that was just a little snippet of one of the fun ways, to get kids engaged. Let's go to, and now as we're getting started and going through here, maybe, there we go. Like I said, it takes a little bit. I'm going to go through a bit of an agenda of today's presentation so you guys kind of know what to expect. The start will be kind of some research behind literacy development and teaching methods, a little bit about how literacy and language build off of each other, and ways to promote literacy for different learners. I wanted to give everybody kind of a heads up. I broke this down into my own created categories. These aren't by any means by age, they're more so by ability, and it's a spectrum. So it's not something where it isn't something where your child only is in this level or only is in that level. I just wanted you to know, so maybe you could help identify where your child is and maybe see where there might be some overlap. At the end, I'll do my contact information and then a Q&A. All righty. Oh, the pause that it takes for it to go to the next slide is a great time for me to take a drink break. So I wanted to talk, this might be a little bit drier. I think I'm much more excited to share some of the strategies with you, but I wanted to go through some of what the reading development and what the research says. So that just means how reading is learned and what that means for individuals with Down syndrome. Before we get started, I did want to go through a little bit of definitions here because you'll see them throughout the presentation. We have decoding, which is the ability to read text. High frequency words, which high frequency words and sight words are words that often get intermixed, but they are a little different. High frequency words are words that occur very often in our language. They're super and extremely necessary to make cohesive sentences, but they have little meaning and they're often taught through memorization. So words like, it, the, it's hard to kind of get meaning, but we need those because they're in almost all of our sentences. And the difference, and the other one is sight words. Those are words that an individual can read with fluency and automaticity. Sight words are different for every single individual. It's just the words that you know and can read quickly and accurately every time. And like I said, that varies, especially for early learners. Let's see. Now, before we get into some more information about the reading, I wanted to go through some of the prerequisites. Before we can read, we need to have a couple different skills. It's absolutely important to build these skills, and you'll see here that starting this is going to be really important before we can even get to the reading piece. One of the prerequisites would be our oral language. So that's just, that's our ability to use our words, to understand our words, getting interested in playing and engaging and kind of building some of that language before we can read. The next one would be print awareness. So this is knowing that letters and words have meaning. This is something that we don't always think about, but is really, really, really critical. It's basically when you open a book and you can point to a word and understand that words are on a page because they're talking about the page. So it's learning that letters and words have meaning. That's why they say, which this is research backed as well. This isn't just something that people say, but reading to your child has absolutely immeasurable benefits. Pointing out all of these different things, building that print awareness not only helps build a love of reading and a love of literacy, but it really, really helps build all aspects. It helps build language, it helps build reading, it helps build so much. Another skill is, another prerequisite would be phonological and phonemic awareness. That in and of itself, I love practicing phonological and phonemic awareness so much. That could be its own presentation, but for the sake of tonight, I will try and keep it nice and concise. But phonological awareness is knowing that language can be broken down into their smaller parts. So basically just knowing that sentences have words, words have sounds. Once you break it down to the word level, that's where we get to that phonemic awareness, which is being able to break words down into their smallest parts, so their sounds, build words, and manipulate sounds. There are a lot of new things even coming out related to the science of reading and how important these skills are. But time and time again, the two most critical skills are called, it's blending and segmenting words. Blending is just taking words by their sounds and building them. So if I said to you, what word is this? Cat, and have them build it, that's blending. And segmenting is just breaking it down. So if I said, what are all of the sounds in the word cat? Most of the time with phonological and phonemic awareness, it's not very many visuals, and letters aren't always present for it. It's honestly just the auditory processing of the words and building that print awareness and building the sound knowledge. After that, that's when we kind of start hearing and learning our letter names and our letter sounds. Again, that is something that is can be really tough. And a lot of the times, from what I've seen and across the board, all my clients, a lot of the times we have kids that start learning to read before they even master all of their letter names and letter sounds, and that's okay. But this next piece, the motivation, if I should have just put this on its own slide in all bold, all caps, underlined, highlighted, building motivation is one of the most influential aspects of reading development. If we do not have motivated readers, they're not going to want to do it. And that's just unfortunately how it is. So we got to really find what kiddos are interested in and build it from there. Okay, so after we go to our prerequisites, if it loads, there we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can build these skills in individuals with Down syndrome. These are all going to be really important and really beneficial, but one of the biggest things that I've found time and time again, regardless of age or ability level, is adding visuals. So adding visuals to really hone in on that visual memory strength, adding images, repetitions, and incorporating multisensory approaches to reach success. Multisensory just means having ways to do this with not just worksheets, but having ways where you're using all of your senses, whether it be with scented markers or whether it be with carpet squares, different ways to build more senses incorporated in each task. Because when we do that, we're really going to see more success and more carryover. Another thing, again, similar to motivation, we have to make learning fun. We have to make it meaningful for our kids. If we find something that they're interested in, that's a great starting off point. It's a great jumping off point, because not only is it meaningful to them, it's something they're interested in, but it's also fun. And now this is something that I've seen in practice, but also has research supporting it as well, that for most differential learners, any sort of other diagnoses, typically phonological awareness skills in a general education classroom are targeted for like 5 to 7 minutes a day. Great, that's awesome. It's this nice little snippet, but research shows that increased time and direct and explicit instruction of these skills for individuals with Down syndrome or concomitant diagnoses is absolutely necessary and beneficial. So not just doing it a little bit at a time, but doing a lot. Again, the one thing I do like about the short periods of time that they do this in the classroom is that they're quick and they're fun. So they learn best when they're having fun, when they're engaged and motivated. So if we're working on these skills, make them fun. And that's going to be super effective. I wanted to tie it all together now. So kind of talking about the actual reading piece. There are different approaches. There's also a lot of differing opinions. There's a lot of research, a lot of different things existing, talking about the ways we actually learn to read. These are 3 of the main approaches. But again, truthfully, it does not matter the program. It does not matter what you're using in school, what your child's book is that they come home with for homework. Modifying it and making it more appropriate for your child or for the reader is going to be the most effective anyway. So no matter what the program is, making it to be more beneficial and cater to your child or the reader is going to be super effective. The different approaches that they have, there's 3. There's a whole language approach, which is kind of shared reading and working together enough to eventually just have the reading kind of take off. That has some mixed reviews and mixed research, but it is something that is taught pretty widely and does work for some individuals. If you see up here on this top right, this is a lot, right? It's a little overwhelming. And this is because these are all the ways that we spell different sounds in our language. When we learn, I know it's a lot, right? There's so many different ways. And when you teach it this way as a phonics-based approach, it can be a little overwhelming, and it's very, it can be time consuming. And that isn't to say it isn't appropriate or isn't worth it, but it sometimes isn't as effective for individuals with Down syndrome from the start. The third approach would be a whole word approach, which is similar to kind of the sight words, where it's just memorization. Because individuals with Down syndrome have most of the time have a pretty strong visual memory, and they really benefit from getting those high interest words and just working on them from a starting point of entire word memorization, making sentences with them, memorizing them. And the one thing that I will say though, too, as our readers develop from this strategy, from a whole word approach, that's just not going to work forever, because we might come across words we don't know where we do have to look at the sounds. So a phonics-based approach eventually is not a bad, is a pretty helpful approach if we're coming up a little bit, finding difficulty with just memorization. We can't memorize every single word that exists, so knowing how to sound it out and break it down does help. Okay. Now, this is one method that it took me a while to find out what this was called, but I do this all the time. And once I figured out how to title it, it made so much more sense. And this is something that I really, really, really want to emphasize and talk about from all aspects. Now, this is effective for teaching letter sounds, teaching words, honestly, even sentences. I call it match, identify or select, and then name. So you can see here, when we start by matching, if we are matching a written word or a letter in a field of targets, this is where flashcards might work great and direct practice. And that's targeting it receptively. So that just means we're not asking our child to tell us. We're not asking them to just say what it is. We're able to ask them to find it. So because if we're having difficulty expressing our words or finding our words, we still know we can modify it for success. So we start by matching. We then go to the next step, which is identifying. We're similar, but it's attempting to find the word by giving a verbal model. So if they're unable to do that, I would definitely give them a written match and go back to the matching. So for example, sorry, let me just get one drink really quickly. Providing repetitions and meaningful connections as needed. So for example, if you're working on letter names and you want them to find the letter T, make connections to something they already like. So find the letter T, like you hear in Thomas, the train. Something that's going to help them remember it, build that extra connection and interest piece, and that'll help. The third step would be to then name. This part is where it becomes expressive, where you can show the letter or word and prompt the reader to read it aloud. What is also helpful, again, because motivation is so critical, it's great to allow the reader to choose the word that they want to name. Have them be part of the lesson planning, have them be part of it, because that's going to help them want to do this. And when they're able to kind of have a choice in the matter and almost be kind of like the teacher as well. It's been really effective for a lot of my kids. This, again, like I said before we got started, I am an idea machine. So this has been something I do with every single client that I work on vowels, because vowels are tough. Vowels are really hard to hear the difference between. They're really hard, and I've consistently across the board seen a lot of difficulty for all of my clients and everybody I've worked with to really remember. So I do gestures to pair the sounds. What's been really helpful is once I teach the kids this, and I teach the families this, and I teach the teachers this, eventually the kiddos don't need to have just the vowel. They don't need the model, and they don't need the gesture. They just need the gesture to help them get there. This, I will model because they're pictures, but I'll model it for you so you can see. I tried to get pictures of it and it just was not conveying the way that I thought. So for I pretend I'm holding an apple and I pretend I'm biting it. So for short E, which is for elephant, I make an elephant trunk. For I pretend I'm itching. For I make a little octopus with my hand. And then I do for up. So that way, even if we're just reading or practicing the sounds or listening to hear the difference between, a lot of the times, by the time the kiddos have seen me do this, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, I will just sit there and go, like this, and it'll help them in their decoding. It'll help them hear it. It'll really, really help them make that connection. And then it's more independence because I wasn't there giving them the sound. It's been something I've done across the board, and it's been really, really helpful for a lot of my kids. Some nice little tips and tricks that I have as well, on top of all of the other things I'll be sharing, is when you are selecting words to practice from either the flashcards or the whole word approach, I would highly recommend using a combination, not just picking first words, not just picking pronouns, but really going and creating a nice little toolbox. So I would include frequently occurring words, like those high frequency words, the, is, in, like. You can see down here as well, sometimes they call this the Fry list or the Dolch word list. This is something that you'll probably see your kids bring home as their sight words of the week. This is typically where we find that word list. Again, super beneficial, but typically are memorized because it's hard to get that meaning. I would also include pronouns such as I or my or me or you, family and friends. Also, words that are found in highly motivating activities. So like TV shows, maybe Elmo, I don't know, movies, games, sports, ball or toys, different things that are motivating, again, because that's going to help our reader want to do this. And also, why choose a combination of words? Because once a child can string two or three of these words together and read them, they're reading. And it's great. And you can see once they start memorizing them, you can put them in front of you as a short sentence, and a child can read the words that they've memorized, and it's amazing. I would also recommend too adding new words frequently as progress is noted, because once that gets going, you can really just take off, and it helps to sustain that motivation, so we're not having just we're not sitting there and feeling like we're plateauing. We're continuing to add words to practice. Now we'll kind of go into how language and literacy, how are they related? Very, very related. This is something that if you know or work with any teachers, or if you've looked into any sort of reading, this reading rope is everywhere. This is Scarborough's reading rope. He really, really nicely explained how the two big skills that are needed to have skilled readers are language comprehension and word recognition. As you can see, that's broken down into a ton of smaller points. And you see here how so much of it to become a skilled reader needs to have language. So we need to build strong language. There are so many aspects of it that you need to have some skill in to help get to that skilled reading. And this is why, as a speech pathologist, I have the language knowledge and the language background. So now I can pair it with actual reading, teaching reading and decoding, and I can pair it really nicely. Something I like to kind of make the analogy of, to kind of tie together the prerequisites and that lead to the reading. It's kind of like either a game of ping pong or a tennis match, because before we can read, we have to build some language. Okay. And then we build some language, then we can start going to the reading. Then we start getting some reading knowledge. Now we have to work on the comprehension. And now we get that comprehension, but the words get more complex. So then we have to work on more reading. So it really just is a back and forth dance to get to that skilled reading. So now this is just these are some common occurrences that how language development does impact reading, especially for individuals with Down syndrome. If their intelligibility of speech or how well they're understood is reduced, it could be really difficult to be understood when they're reading aloud or saying letter sounds. If hearing loss is present, it's difficult to distinguish between letter names, sounds, words. If there's expressive language deficits, so how well they're able to use their words, it can be difficult to formulate sentences about images, labeling, using vocabulary, discussing what is read. There's a lot of different areas that reading can be impacted if these exist. If there is receptive language deficits, so how well we're understanding, it might be difficult to comprehend what is heard, read, and it can also impact our vocabulary skills. A lot of the evidence supports reading, and it does really support the ability for reading to take place. A lot of individuals with Down syndrome develop some capacity of reading, when they receive catered instruction. The downfall tends to be comprehension. So we can read it, but it's hard to understand what we're reading about. So that's why that language piece is just absolutely critical. Now we get into my favorite part and the fun part of how you can help your child succeed, and what different strategies you can use based on your child's ability level to really help them be successful and build that confidence. Like I had said previously, I kind of just created these categories. These are by no means by age or ability. This is just something that you can maybe find some strategies for your child specifically. The first category is I titled early learners. This means individuals who are just kind of getting started with the reading development. They've built some language up, they're starting to understand, they might like books, or they might start getting an interest in looking at pictures. They might start doing some early phonological awareness skills, learning that letters exist, and beginning to understand that those words have meanings. A lot of times we haven't, at this stage, there's not really a lot of letter knowledge, and that's okay. We're just getting these prerequisite skills. To build that reading and print awareness, something that's really been beneficial and something that is supported as well is pointing out logos to kind of really capitalize on that visual memory, such as McDonald's while you're driving by, to associate the picture with the words, start making it recognizable, looking at Target, the different places that we all go all the time, pointing out, oh, McDonald's, see it, that's McDonald's, that's the logo for McDonald's, starting to get them to see that the pictures or the words are actually signifying something, like, oh, there's a restaurant there. I see that sign, that's how I know. Reading books as much as possible. Not all of our kids like books, and that's okay. Sometimes our kids don't want to sit for books, and that's fine. On YouTube, there's actually animated books if you look them up. I think one of my favorites, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, if you look up like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom read aloud on YouTube, it kind of is animated, so the tree jumps and it kind of makes it more of a song, but it's still a book. So it's a nice way to kind of pair that if we're not big book kiddos or book readers. I would also call notice to the title and the front of the book, so they're starting to understand that there's a front, there's a back, there's a title, these are pages, kind of knowing what happens when we hold a book. You can also make guesses based on the book's cover. If it's, I don't know, Where's Spot, which is one of my favorites, I use that book all the time. You can make guesses about it, and you can talk about it and say, I wonder what this is going to be about. My absolute favorite strategy is being your own storyteller. So ignore the words. Sometimes if you get to a book, a lot of the times, even kids' books, they have a ton of words on a page. So just ignore them. You can make up your own story, make up a sentence about it. It's amazing. You can also have them draw pictures about what they read to kind of retell the story. Ask and answer questions throughout the reading and model the answers as needed. And point out early vocabulary within the books. This is even like ball, jump, kind of modeling that so that they can see it. This is something that is super, super, super important, is meeting your child at their level. If your child if you want them to be telling stories with you, you want to meet them where they're at. If they communicate in single words, model it at the 1 and 2 word level. If they communicate in phrases, model their phrases in short sentences. If they are an AAC device user, model those sentences while you're looking and ignoring the words. Now, this I'm going to try and go through quickly, but these are just some different ways to work on the early phonological awareness skills. So when you're reading and looking at pictures or listening to songs, acknowledge words that rhyme. Start here. This is kind of that earliest skill. Point out multisyllabic words. Pictures, model the claps in a word. So I don't know, Dr. Seuss has a ton of rhyming words. I'm assuming probably, Paw Patrol, that's a really popular thing with kids. You can point out those words that rhyme. You can point out how longer words have syllables, and also the beginning sounds of the words. When I gave some examples of activities, and they can be edited or changed to target all of these skills. So with rhyming, this has been a huge hit with so many of my kids. I make monster bags, and I'll write like a big yes or a big like check mark or a big X for no. And they have to sort it based on if it rhymes. I have them count syllables, making it multisensory. So fruit snacks or jelly beans, Play-Doh, coloring. My visual aid that I use this literally constantly, all the time, because it helps to take the receptive piece of it. So if we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, I can have them receptively identify syllables if they're having trouble clapping and keeping track of the claps. Labeling initial sounds, like the word, oh, this word ball starts with b, like balloon or boy. You're helping them understand that there's a beginning, middle, and an end. Again, a bonus point for you is if you make connections when calling notice, like the first sound in names or high interest items. And last would be beginning blending. I would start with compound words. So words like sun, shine, bed, room. As you can see, under most of these, I have a lot of links here for you because it can be hard to think of words. There is a list of compound words here. Also, multisyllabic words start at 2 or 3. What's really great about the syllables and beginning to blend them, which just means going like sun, shine, sunshine. What really helps is you can do this just all throughout your day. You don't have to be doing this during a book. You don't have to be labeling sounds in a book or counting syllables in a book. You can be doing this all day. One of my biggest things that I like to share with families, and one of my biggest things that I hope you take away from today, is that it's easy to build literacy into everything you're doing without having to be too intensely into specific sitting down and doing structured activities. You can build this into whatever you're doing throughout the day. Down here, I am actually going to stop sharing this really quickly because I wanted to show you this website. It's Florida Center for Reading Research. It's phenomenal. It is so great. It has so many different examples and activities for kids. I'll share it with you really quick. And it's free. That's the other thing. It's free, so it's great. I'm all about free. You can pick based on where your kiddo's at. You can click and it has just so many different activities and they're all free. And it breaks it down based on whether it's letter names, letter sound understanding, just so many things that I've pulled activities from. It's a really, really helpful website. And again, like I said, not the most tech savvy, so I'm going to go ahead and reshare this again. But like I said, you can model this and change things based on whatever activity you're looking for or practicing. Next step would be our beginning readers. This would be individuals who have some letter names and maybe some letter sound knowledge, and they're showing interest in books and reading, and they're still working on their phonological awareness. Strategies for helping the reading. I have a video here that talks a bit about segmenting and how you can practice it. For time's sake, I'm not going to be able to play it, but I did embed the link for you. So like I said before, when we do blending, you're giving the sounds in a word for the individual to build the word. Sometimes I have kiddos like jump on squares and they have to go like to the red square of k, ah, t, and then slide and it's cat. Or we can use what are they called? Clothespins, and they can go sound by sound. Different ways to make it fun and engaging helps to target the skill. When we break words down into smaller parts, like I had said, these are super, super important skills. I would highly recommend not forgetting consonant blends and digraphs. So consonant blends are just 2 or 3 consonants that are next to each other and have their own sound. So like in spin, we have s, the reason being a lot of times there isn't as much focus on these longer blends and digraphs, or which just means 2 letters that make one sound. So kids really break down at this point. If they have 4 phonemes, if we have a 4 sound word like twin, and we have trouble breaking it down by t, w, I, n, it's going to be really, really hard for writing. And if we have trouble blending it, and if I would say a really good portion of the time, if I give all 4 sounds, one of those consonants gets dropped. So that's going to be difficult for reading. So if we go and do t, w, I, n, and I hear tin, they're close, but it's really tricky if we don't include that practice with longer words, like 4 and 5 sound words. I would reinforce letter names and sounds via fun and multisensory methods. I think, again, because we are all a team, we're all working together, we're all working with your reader. So asking teachers for whatever visual copy that they have in their alphabet used is in school, that continuity. You can make a game of memory for it. You can do things and make sure you're working with a team to help get that continuity and carryover. Use the match, identify, and read or name method for assigned letters and words, and continue reading to your child. Encourage them to draw pictures or write about what they read. Again, I cannot stress this enough, especially for early readers. Don't focus on the spelling. If it's wrong, fine. We just want to really build that interest in the writing, because writing is another tough skill that could also be an entire presentation. So not focusing on the spelling is really helpful. The next phase we have here are emerging readers. These are readers who are able to read some words in a story or short decodable, which is basically just a methodically chosen book with words that are at the level that we have practiced without going too far in advance for kids. So they're short stories that are pretty much these short words. And this website here, down Flyleaf Publishing, these are free. If you click on the link, it's free. There's a ton of free resources, and they're all accessible online until the remainder of the 2023 school year, which I love. Like I said, I love things that are free. I love to share it so you guys have access to it, because that's the biggest thing, is knowing what to do and where to find it. When it comes to these readers, I would reiterate the learned phonics patterns if they are addressing them in school. One thing that I work on is maybe working on blending with the sneaky or magic E, like ache, and then talking about how we know it has the E at the end to make that A say its name. Reiterating it and talking about it is going to be really helpful. Reading together, again, I know I'll say this with every stage, but when we get to this phase, we're kind of reading a little bit less modeling and a little bit more shared reading. So you can kind of do a little bit of turn taking, especially if you have the reader fill in the blanks for the words you know that they've seen before or practiced. A way to help with the identifying is to have them find the target word. So if you have them, hey, find that word book. Where's that word book? They can find it. Or find the first letter in the word dog. Where's that at? Kind of helping them identify it helps too. This is something that is really beneficial as kids age 2, is making sure they're looking at the first letter and slowly read it. That's something that a lot of times kids will just look at the whole word and guess it. No, try if you can, have them slow it down, have them look at the sounds and make an educated guess. Have them answer who, what, and where questions, and model or prompt in full sentences from these responses. Have visuals of letters, the words, the concepts. You guys can highlight the vocabulary words, the sight words, or high interest words. You can also have them practice this after reading. Once we get past here, here's me and another one of my little ladies working on some reading. These are proficient readers. So this would be readers who are starting to read longer books, maybe like chapter books. Academic content is getting increasingly complex, and they're often demonstrating more independence with their reading abilities. Thank you. So when it comes to these readers, I would chat with the teachers again to find out what's most difficult for them. I would use visuals to keep organized when reading aloud, like these reading strips here. These are called guided reading strips. They're basically just like a highlighter in the middle to help kids stay organized. I would have them, I cannot emphasize slowing down our rate of reading enough. It reduces skipping over words. It really, really helps. And it happens a lot. We skip over the words and just keep going. I would encourage the reader to look at the sound of unfamiliar words rather than guessing. This is where the phonics knowledge gets to be really, really important. We might not be able to memorize the words, so we have to look at the sounds. We also need to work as a team when we're reading aloud. This is one of my favorite things I like to talk about. It is in general, not just with reading, it is so hard to acknowledge when we don't know something. It is so hard to acknowledge if we don't know or if we need help, let alone saying, hi, I don't know this. What is this? I have really taken on a team-based approach with this, where I will say to my kiddos, like, hey, can we work as a team? And after we do, I'll just model the word. And after a while, these kids start telling me, they'll ask for help and they look at me and ask what the word is. And so it's us being successful together. And that's so necessary from all aspects. When it comes to the comprehension, we have some information before reading, so you can activate background knowledge. Super important. So discuss what's already known about a topic, make predictions from a cover, making those guesses, talking about the vocabulary. If you can preemptively talk about it, it may impact comprehension if they don't have the vocabulary. So you want to talk about it before and during the reading. Another favorite of mine is a picture walk. Love them. I love them so much. That is basically when I take a book, cover the words, and have the reader make up a story. A lot of the times, our kiddos will try to peek at the words. So I'll cover them because I want them to use their imagination. I want them to be looking at the pictures, asking and answering questions while you're reading. I also think making comments and modeling your line of thinking, so like a think aloud, is a really, really great way, again, to build that team-based approach. So if you're sitting there, instead of just asking questions the whole time, saying things like, oh, I see that character really liked going to the movies with their friends. I also love going to the movies. I wonder what they'll see. It's kind of you just thinking aloud and helping them think critically while without putting so much pressure on answering the questions. After you're done reading, practicing retelling the story, this can go in different ways. You can take a story from the beginning, middle, or end, full story elements, or even can work on main idea and supporting details for nonfiction content. These are just graphic organizers I found from Teachers Pay Teachers. I would bet there are, I don't know, thousands of these. If you just look up graphic organizer, something that I've found to be really beneficial too is you can break this down. Instead of doing every book, you can do this page by page. You can do this every few pages, every chapter, having them say, hey, what do you remember about this? What happened at the beginning? What happened in the middle? What happened at the end on this page? Breaking it down based on the ability is really helpful. And that's something too that can really help them build that sequencing. Again, too, when we're done, to keep that motivation and excitement, we can ask them what they like the most, what was important, or have them ask questions what they'd like to continue to know. This is our last little area here. I know I keep looking at the clock. I feel like we're doing okay on time, and I'm excited because this will be our last category. This is for functional and independent readers. This might be adults. This might be individuals who are approaching graduation, or adults, and me giving you guys some strategies how to keep literacy in your everyday lives. So building independence in adulthood, I would highly recommend keeping a calendar with a really strong emphasis on the individual being in charge. If needed, you can have them provide a written copy of events for them to fill in their calendar, either a physical or a phone version, but I really want it to be something where they're referencing regularly, because then they're getting that recognition of seeing the word for days of the week or activities that they have to do. Give them the appointment card to fill it out on the calendar. Have a list of commonly used words that would be beneficial to recognize, read, and write. So, for example, this picture here is one of my clients. We're working on functional vocational words. So we picked a set list of words where during our sessions, I have him match them, and every week we include new ones. And then after we match them, I have him find them, and then we read sentences that I've created to use the words that I know can be decoded. And I know that that's something that's made such a big impact because it's helping that vocational piece. Have your individual participate in the grocery shopping with you, with the restaurant ordering and our event planning. Some ideas of helping this to be more independent, where you could make the list of the groceries, have the individual write all the prices, or they have to write down the order. That way it's working on money management, but also they're having to find the prices, find the object, or find the item. It's helping increase that exposure. I would also encourage reading or using assistive technology about topics of high interest for discussion. So there's two really great strategies I'll end with today, and they're assistive tech to help with taking away the pressure of reading and increasing independence. Like that's what I want. If I'm working with an adult, I want to find ways to not only build reading, but also to build that independence. So 2 strategies that you can use with this. They're voice to text, which honestly can be sometimes tricky if we have reduced intelligibility. So it may interfere. What really helps is if you have something written down or a list of things you want to look up to help with that voice to text piece. Basically, it's just using your microphone and having your phone pick up what you wanted to say. If you're not sure and say you do that and you want the individual to make sure it's right, then they can use text to speech where you just highlight. It's basically highlighting text that reads it aloud to you anywhere. On Google Docs, it does it on just Google in general. Sometimes I look up things like movies and we talk about movies, asking questions, answering questions, building those conversations. It's an accessibility setting under most smart devices. I think what's really awesome and a really great place to use this is when working with individuals and you want to with adults, you want them to be able to maybe see today's news or find out what movies are coming out or see what happened at the Pens game last night. So if they're using these strategies or just looking things up in general, I would also highly encourage you to look them up as well, because that's that talking point. That's going to keep our individuals wanting to learn more and read more, because they are getting to have a conversation with us that we also looked up to find that information out. Whether they're using the technology strategies or not, that's fine. It's just awesome to be able to build that connection and to help them independently find what they're interested in and get to share with us and have conversations with us. It's so important. Some examples of where you can use this, like I said, pretty much everywhere, but emails are great, texts, surfing the internet, checking your calendar. I've included the links down here on how to turn those on for Apple and Android devices. And I've used it with a lot of my varying age clients or individuals that I've worked with. And it's been really, really helpful to really build that independence piece. So in summary, oops, that was not supposed to be there. Give me 1 second here. Again, technology. But in summary, I really, really want to make sure that you guys, when working and building reading in your reader or with your child, I really, really want to make sure that you feel like you have access to different resources. You have, now know some different strategies you can use and encourage and build that and build into what you're doing with your readers. I really think that reading is something that's so critical in all aspects of life, but so is language. So having both of those aspects and knowing that we can work on them easily throughout your day, without it being so much of a hassle. We're all super busy. We all have a million things on our plate. So it's really hard to see it from a different standpoint. Instead of sitting and thinking, I need to sit and do this, you really truly can do this all the time throughout your day without having to make it be another task or another thing on your to-do list. Now, just to kind of summarize, this is kind of where you can find me. This is my email. It's Kayla@therapyworksllc.com. If you are interested in kind of learning more about the reading services that I'll be providing, we're going to be offering some really, really great reading based services that are direct and explicit reading instruction for individuals, no matter ability level, no matter their age. It will be catered to each individual person's needs, regardless of their beginning reading level. And if maybe one-on-one is not something you're super interested in, please keep an eye out on our social media. We have so many great groups, not just literacy based. I mean, I'm biased. I love my job. I love where I work. And we have so many fun and creative ways to get our individuals involved. So if you are interested in keeping up with those or interested in looking into what we have there, I have included our website here with a little bit more information and our social media. And then the last slide is just our references. So I really hope I'm excited to answer some of your questions, but I do really hope that while we only had so much time, I really hope I gave you guys just content overload, different ideas and strategies. So thank you again, and I'm really excited to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Kayla. That was great. And just to reiterate, since you said content, a lot of great content, a lot of links, we'll make not only the recording available, but the slides as well, so that everybody can click through it and get those. So there's 3 questions in the chat, and then I have a couple of people sent in. So the first one is, what if a child is having trouble recognizing letters, numbers, and sight words? What additional evaluation would be recommended in 1st grade?
So I think that's a great question. I do think that when working at, if they're having trouble recognizing letters, numbers, and sight words, I would honestly even back it up a little bit and see how we do with the phonological awareness piece. Can we, do we understand the beginning part of a word and the ending of a word when we hear it? Do we know how to take 3 or 4 sounds and build a word? Before we can read, we want to make sure we're having some of those foundational skills. And so if we're having trouble with the higher levels, with the recognition, I would honestly even try out some phonological awareness based, not just evaluating, but just monitoring. A lot of the teachers already do this. So if you are having questions about that and where they're at, I would definitely ask your teacher and see what they say and see where their areas of need are before even doing the letters, numbers, and sight words. See how they do with the other foundational aspects as well. I hope that answered your question. And again, if you have more questions, please feel free.
And do you see, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I opened the chat. Sorry, I see it here.
Yeah,
That's okay. All right. So what I do, it's asking if I see clients in the home setting, in the school setting, and how is that decided? So for the reading-based strategies, we are a home-based service, but because we're doing a lot more with the reading, most of the sessions I'm seeing will be at our brick and mortar center. We do have that down in the South Hills of Pittsburgh in Mount Lebanon, and I do have ability to do home-based services, but most of the ones for literacy only are at our brick and mortar, so I have access to as many materials as I can to make it fun and effective. And then, so can those activities, the last one, if the activities on that Florida Center for Reading Research can be personalized, or if not, are there any apps you would recommend that allow you to incorporate family photos and kids' interests so they are more motivated to do these activities? That is a great question. I love that question. It's a little bit tricky to modify them, and I think they're honestly just accessible and not really modifiable, unfortunately, from what I've seen. So what I would recommend doing is, if you would like to make it more catered and motivated, which I would highly recommend if you have the time and ability to do so, I would recommend maybe looking at the activities that they have offered, seeing what the goals of it are, whether they're, I don't know, taking a beanbag and tossing it to find a letter in like a cornhole game. Finding out what the activity is to get that idea, and then you can maybe even print photos off or find your own photos and incorporate them into the same kind of activity without having to change or do too much more, hopefully, fingers crossed.
And are there any apps that you would recommend?
The apps, that's tough. There is this one, I'm not entirely, I can let you know what it is. I'm pretty sure the company's called ABC Kids. This company offers all of these phenomenal free apps. Again, free. It's great. And so the one specifically that I've used a lot, they have a whole bunch in their store, but the one that I've used is letter tracing, and it's on an iPad, but what I liked about it, and I've shared this actually with occupational therapists as well, because it's been pretty helpful. It makes the tracing go at the right like formation. So it's not just letting them color the letter, they have to go up and down. And that's a great way for them to not only practice the writing, get exposure to the letter. It also does letter identification in a field of 4, which is really nice. And so that's one of the apps that I've been using pretty regularly with my kiddos because it's motivating. They love it, you know. We love I try to make things more multisensory and not incorporate technology too much. But if I'm going to, it's going to be something fun and that they like to do.
And then I have some of questions that were submitted before the talk. Oh, but I will say too, somebody added in that app is called Wet, Dry, Try.
Oh, I honestly have never heard of that. I'll
So
have to check. I'm going to write that down because that sounds great.
thank you.
I do think, especially with the pandemic hitting, it really, really helped a push for getting more access to materials and app development, which has been really nice because I have like a set list of things that I use, but there's so much that exists. And so I love that everyone's, sharing what's awesome and what they use and what's effective. It's great. Thank you, by the way.
So a question that was submitted is, my child has speech apraxia, so it makes it extra challenging for us to know what they know. Any suggestions on how to encourage them to read aloud and answer questions would be appreciated.
Yeah, so that is common. And I think that that's a really awesome question. I think what I've found to be really helpful when it comes to difficulty with the expressive piece is finding ways to modify it where you give them written choices, visual choices. If you're saying, let's find the word, if you say, hey, ball, which one shows that picture? If they can find the ball, then you can have them practice saying it a few times, especially because the apraxia piece is motor planning. So you want to do that repetition with it. So trying to take it from just saying it and having them identify it first and then practicing together to build that confidence, because that's all I want. I know that's what we all want. We all want our abilities to improve, our confidence to be improved. So making it and taking it from a receptive or way of identifying before naming might be a good step to help build that expressive piece. And then once they are practicing naming or reading aloud, practice those difficult words a few times, or make it known that there's certain things with your speech therapist or with the teachers that you'd want them to do, because again, we're all a team. We all want what's best for all of our individual readers. So keeping that team mentality and making sure that we're all included is going to be really helpful too.
Thank you. And you covered this kind of some tips and tricks, but the question is how to teach a child with Down syndrome how to read. So I guess, are there any top, recommendations you would have, or?
Yeah, I mean, make it fun and motivating. Again, especially when you're starting out, finding and starting with something that's, your child likes. Finding things that they're interested in, whether, I don't know, it's toys or whether it's trucks or Elmo or Sesame Street, finding those places or starting points to get the buy-in. If we don't have the buy-in, it's going to be really hard to keep going and keep getting that, trickier things. Eventually we are going to have to do some more structured teaching. And so before we can do that, we want these kids to do this. So I think when we're working with teaching to read, catering it to be what your child likes and going with activities they like, whether you're practicing jumping on a trampoline however many times or however many syllables are in the word butterfly, whatever it is you can incorporate to what your child likes is going to be a really, really, really helpful strategy. And again, that or the match, identify, then name strategy has been something I've been doing for years, and it's been extremely beneficial.
Thank you. And we have 2 more questions.
Great.
This one is, my child is 11 years old, has Down syndrome, nystagmus, and is possibly dyslexic. They've got a trifecta working against them. At 11, they're still not reading. They have excellent retention skills, 100% accuracy with ASL sight words, but those same words in print after 6 years are brand new on a page each time they attempt to read the words. After 6 years, they are still not a reader. So any insight on that?
If they're able to recognize the words and they're able to find the words, I would say that they're reading, and that's pretty great. I think what you could really do, especially if you have this set list of words that you know that they're practicing, kind of maneuvering it and making it almost making different silly sentences with it. When you're working on these skills, if you know that they're recognizing the ASL sight words, try and maybe, build it into smaller sentences, or start having them help fill in the blanks where you can fill in the unknown word. I do think, though, if they are recognizing and identifying and able to recognize that they are reading it, they might just have trouble expanding it. And if they are, then you can really do some of that direct and explicit sitting down, practicing it, if the reader would do that. Sometimes it's tricky to get that one-on-one time and get that direct practice. But if that is something that's a little tricky, I would find, and whenever you're expanding the words in their kind of toolkit, you can make it fun. Something I like to do with my kids is you can tape the words up around your house and have them go find it and then make sentences. That's a really fun game. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt. Or memory is a really awesome one for that. But I really do think that there is always ability and potential for growth in every individual that I've worked with. I've always seen growth regardless of age. It a lot of times just comes down to kind of shifting the way that we're approaching it and making it more fun and more catered to our reader. And that's where you're going to start seeing that progress.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, of course.
And last question is, at what age is the struggle to identify letters and numbers a concern or a possible concern for an additional disability?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think a lot of the times I don't know if I would per se age is a good descriptor. I'm a very much so less on age, more on ability level, but I do think if you are seeing consistent practice, if you are practicing it a lot and there is still a lot of difficulty, I would maybe discuss with that reader's team to see if there are any additional testing to pursue to maybe rule out maybe if there's dyslexia or some other sort of specific learning disability.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That's all the questions that we have. And like I said, we'll be sure to share your contact information, this recording, the resources that you share, your slides, your links, everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, if you ever have any other questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. I really hope that you guys found something that you could take away from today and be able to build it into your everyday practice with your child, regardless of age, regardless of ability. And I really hope that you learned something today and had fun while doing so.
Thank you. And again, just to share with everyone what your email, Kayla@therapyworksllc.com.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to email me if you're also interested in seeing what kind of individual services we do as well. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Take care and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.